This is another DrumWise Meets, and today I'm here with Ralph Salmins. Hi Ralph.
Hey Tom, how you doing?
What equipment are you currently using when we're in a normal sort of, playing situation, which isn't a lockdown?
Yeah, I've got a setup that I favour, which I like to have, and I've got a rig here that I'm using for sessions, online sessions, and it's pretty much the rig that I use for most things, and that is it's a Gretsch USA. I've got various they're all Gretsch USA. Some of them are vintage, some of them are new, but I favour the setup I like is a 22, 16, or 14. I have a 14 here as well, bass drum, and then I've got a 12 by 8 and a 16-inch floor. In fact, over here I've got a couple of spares going on, so I've got a 12 by 9 and a hanging 16, which is actually really nice because I used to have hanging toms a la Steve Gadd back in the day, and I really do like them. So it's just slightly more resonant than a tom on legs. And then I've got a selection of snare drums that I always put in. Normally my touring rig is the same. I'm using the Gretsch hammered brass, a very, very good drum, and all 6.5, and then I use a Gretsch wood 6.5. I swap them out on the gig, and then I've got a little 13 by 6.5 steel drum, which I crank up really high on the left. I have that on the left for high, and that's really good. I've got my Sabian cymbal set up, which is 14-inch hats of various descriptions. If I had to pick one set that I love the Artisans. They're super musical, but I have some old hand hammers as well, and then the new hand hammers are amazing. Then I normally use two 18-inch crashes of different types. So on the left I have usually an H Extreme, something like that. I try to avoid having brilliant finish. I don't really like anything that's brilliant finish. And then on the right it'll be I'm not sure what it is actually. I normally have a Legacy on the left 18 and an HH Extreme on the right, something like that. And then with the Waterboys I have a 19 instead of an 18 on my left, I think. And then the ride cymbal, my one sort of pull out choice is the Legacy 22 Legacy Heavy, which is an absolutely amazing cymbal, all things to all men. That cymbal will do anything: jazz, rock and roll, guitars, quiet, brushes. It's amazing. But I do chop and change around a lot, and I've got the Artisans are just mind-blowing. So at the moment I've got a combination of different main rides here where I am, and I've got a new hand hammered 21 or 22, which is beautiful. The new hand hammered series are amazing. They've got real beautiful stick definition, but they're very creamy, full of character. And then I've got a 22-inch Artisan, and I very often put 3 rivets into that cymbal, and I use that as my alternate cymbal, and it's beautiful. And then just the 2 crashes, it works out really well. There it is.
Wow.
So that's how I have it, and that's in my front hall. We don't use the front door here, so it's kind of a little room, and it works out real great.
Mm.
There's the rig. There are a whole bunch of homemade shakers on there. Look at that. Yeah, I've got pretty locked down creative. It's good. And of course, really important is having head choice. I basically Remo Ambassador coated on the snare I'm always using, but I do chop and change around a little. But Ambassador coated for me is a super fave. Then on the toms, I'm normally an Ambassador coated on the smaller drum or a clear. And then on the bigger toms, I normally use an Emperor, either an Emperor coated or an Emperor have actually been using a bit of Ambassador Clear. In fact, both Tom's Ambassador Clear with the Waterboys, and just a bit of moon gel on that, and it sounds amazing. I love that head combination as well. Um, that's the rig. I've got, I'm a Vic artist. I use a lot of different sticks that are fantastic. And then a few little other tricky little things like a little tuna fish lug locks, extremely useful. I rely on those a lot. Combination of Gibraltar, some DW 9000 pedal, usually on the bass drum pedal. I'm always on that. Gibraltar cymbal stands. Yeah, standard rig really, Tom, and quite basic as well. Sometimes I'll take out 4 toms if someone asks for a studio date and they want more stuff. Then I'll take out a 10 or 12 and a couple of bigger toms. It does happen, but usually I'm just 2 toms because I like the vocabulary that will imply, and I like to keep it a bit more simple.
Oh well, and thanks for showing us. That's amazing. That's great.
All right. Pleasure. Oh, that's clear. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. The simple rig.
What age did you start drumming, and what music or bands inspired you to begin with?
Well, I started playing the drums when I was 12, and my parents used to take me to some jazz gigs in London when I was growing up, and it was we used to go to a place where actually people who were children, people who weren't 18, could go, which is much more difficult these days. And we used to go to a place in Woolwich called the Tram Shed, and they had loads of fantastic bands there, and mainly Dixieland jazz bands, but they were great bands. And so I sort of first got into jazz, really. That was my first thing. And I played different instruments before then, the violin, the piano, and I've sort of been a really mediocre piano player, basic piano player throughout college. But I just, once I got into drums, that was it. And jazz was my first thing. But I quickly got into all styles of music, obviously.
If you had to pick, could you pick your all-time favorite drummer?
Probably Steve Gadd.
Mm-hmm.
But I love everybody, and I love all of the greats. My 3 of my real favorite drummers right now are the 3 Steves: Steve Gadd, Steve Jordan, and Steve Ferroni. But you could go all the way back to anyone from Mel Lewis, Philly Joe Jones, Elvin Jones, Roy Haynes, Gene Krupa, Buddy Rich, all the way up to John Bonham, Lee Von Helm, Rick Marotta, Jeff Porcaro, pretty much anyone. All the greats. I love all the greats. I'm very into Brian Blade. I love Bill Stewart. I'm interested in some of the contemporary guys like Ari Honig. A real mix. Nate Smith, incredible. All of them.
Yeah, that's a pretty good list. It's good for like our students or whatever that watch this. You giving us a list like that is amazing. And actually, one of the guys on your list, Steve Ferroni, I did an interview with Steve the other week, and that
great.
That was cool.
He's just amazing. I love his drumming. Can't get enough of it. The 2 Shaka Khan records, Naughty and What You're Gonna Do For Me, are absolute rhythm section masterpieces. I mean, it's as good as it gets. I mean, he's a monster, just a monster. And all the Average White stuff that he played on, and all the other stuff that he's done. I mean, it's just gorgeous.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So here's one for you. Whether it's a recording session or live work, when you first get a gig with a new artist that maybe you've not played with before,
yeah,
how do you learn the songs? So do you transcribe them, or do you just listen, or are you expected to learn it from a chart? So you're given the music on a page, and here you go, learn that.
Yeah. That's a great question. It's a mix of all of those things. Usually, if it's an artist that has got their own music, there are no charts. So what I do is I write it down, and then I keep those charts for myself. And often I give those to other people who might follow me into the gig, so they can be useful for other people. But I write down sort of detailed sketch charts, or some gigs like if I'm doing a an orchestral thing or a session thing, or someone who's got arrangements that have been written, there will be drum charts, and that's great because I just read them. I don't have to do any much prep. I don't really mind listening to the music though and writing it down for the simple reason that it's great to um, it's a really good way of getting to know the music if you write it down. So, I can sketch out parts pretty quickly. And then I don't do so much of just learning it because I'm a reader, so I'm used to putting stuff down on paper. But I do try and get my head away from the charts as quickly as possible. Just, and it's a balance between how much rehearsal time you have, which is usually none, and what degree of accuracy you need on the gig. And most of the time, I can write a lot of accuracy on my drum charts,
Yeah.
and I know what to do without rehearsing. And most of the things I do have got a little or no rehearsal, so I can just put it down, and it'll come out correct as long as I've got the right tempo and I don't misinterpret things. So that's what I do, and it tends to work. It's a good way of doing it. So for students, I would say, work on transcribing stuff. Definitely write stuff down. And when you hear music that you like or you're inspired by, try and write it down. And don't be put off if you struggle to get it on paper or you struggle to write the rhythms down. I struggle to write the rhythms down, and so does everyone else. Sometimes I have to just write lines above the stave just so I know where the beats are. As long as you get it down there and you work it out in the end, it's going to be fine.
Great bit of advice. Thanks. That's awesome. Because yeah, some people just aren't sure about the reading thing, especially when let's say it's an adult student that's starting out, and they're like, oh, I don't really want to read. I never pressure
Yeah.
it, but I think people don't realise the pros and cons of it. It's
Well, you're right. The problem with reading music is it takes such a long time to learn. So a lot of people get put off by that. If you're just playing for a bit of fun, um, it doesn't really matter. If you're a professional, it doesn't necessarily really matter. But the thing is, nearly everything I do, I'm reading from charts. So, all of my students, most of them, all of my college students can read, and they will read, and they're going to read as pros. I've got some private students who can't read. It doesn't really matter. They might be in rock and roll bands, but it's not that difficult if you work on it. So I would encourage everyone, just like, don't be put off by it. Try and get it, because it's such a useful tool, even if you've got basics, because most of the stuff we're doing is crotchets and quavers. It's not that hard. But if you can recognize a few rhythms, most of the rhythms we play are pretty simple, then that's going to really make it's advantageous. It's a tool. So don't be scared off is my message.
when you first set up in a studio. Say maybe it's not your studio, or so you're going somewhere to record, and you first set your kit up in the studio. What do you do about tuning your drums to the environment or the room that they're in?
I listen to the room, and I just become aware. Just make sure I'm aware of what the room sounds like. If it's a very resonant room, and someone else is in that room with me, I've got to be mindful of that. Most of the recording studio setups that I'm in, I'm either in a drum booth, or I'm boothed off with either baffles, screens, or whatever, just to make the recording process easier. But I have one time I did turn up with the London Symphony Orchestra, and they set the rhythm section up in front of the orchestra, behind the conductor, and there was a solo violinist standing right in front of me, and there was a mic, two mics on top of a fiddle. So you can imagine, I mean, seriously, if I even looked at my drums, they were too loud, and I had to find a way of getting it. And I said to the engineer, "Don't worry, we're gonna make this work." The drum part was really quiet, but I was literally like, put a brush across the snare drum. It was like, oh blimey, that's too loud. So I had to really. We built. There weren't any screens available. We built a kind of a you know, like a screen around me with the piano cover, and then I just tried to play as quietly as possible, and it worked in the end. But that was an extreme example. So it is important to be aware of the space that you're in, for sure.
And actually, that kind of leads me nicely on to my next question. What's the most unusual recording technique you've ever used? So what I mean by that is kind of what you were saying there, like, you know, you've had to do something on the fly, or it required a sound where you had to, you know, get the old tea towel out
Yeah.
or something like that.
All of those crazy things are good, and there are no rules. You know, basically, um, well, actually, I have done stuff on tea towels when we've tried to get a Beatles sound, but my son, Lester Salmins, his name is, and he's a producer and an artist and an engineer, and quite often I do things with him, and he'll literally come out the control room, and just put tea towels on the drums. I love that sound. It's so thuddy, it's so dry, it's great. There's no rule, you know, to stick to. You know, that I've heard about guys putting like a tin bath next to the drums and then miking that out. Some of the film composers actually put like tin watering cans in the room. I've seen that in Abbey Road, and they put a mic in a watering can.
Wow.
And also, we've done things like, I know at Abbey Road on one, I think it might have been Interstellar or something like that. But anyway, it was something like that. We were playing, the air conditioning grills. Why not? You know, all of those things, crazy stuff, or putting a mic. Quite often, people put microphones in the hallway outside of the room. They sound really good. It looks miles away, and you think, oh, you'll never be able to use that. And when you hear it, you're like, wow, that's a really good sound. So I would, you know, I've done loads of those. I've had it all. I've had the mics on top, underneath, crazy, different stuff. They're all interesting, and they're worth checking out. One of the things that I do a lot is I do muffle my drums quite a lot. A lot of people are like, "Oh, why are you muffling the drum so much?" It's like, well, when you've got a microphone right next to a drum, that's like putting your ear 1 inch from a drum. You're hearing a lot of rings and things that you might not hear if you're 1 foot 10 meters away or whatever. It's different, so you've got to be aware of that. You know, but basically, crazier the better. Why not?
Absolutely.
You know,
I've recorded
yeah, and yeah,
songs,
huh?
you know, I'll always remember that. It was great. What a great sound.
Yeah, you know, I was something I would say for students is the first thing is I know you encourage them to do this, but one of the central tenets of everything that I'm doing in when I'm teaching is to record. I do record my students in my studio, and they can hear themselves back. So I always say I liken that to, you know, if you come down in the morning, you want to have a mirror in the bathroom so you can see what you look like. So the same with recordings, and to tell you what you sound like, that's important. So it's one of those things that if you can record yourself, it's a big advantage. You only need one or two mics to get yourself going to get a really good result, and you can record good enough for a record with two mics. And there's a video of I think Bob Clearmountain shows it, recording with Matt Chamberlain. They got two mics. All right, they're very good mics, but you don't need a great mic on the bass drum to make a good sound. And then you can use a basic condenser mic, and that will be enough to really get just one bass drum and one rest of the kit. You can get a great result from that just by slightly moving them. So if you can get into recording yourself, I would say it's something I highly recommend.
We always tell students to record themselves and film themselves as well, so they can watch what they're doing and analyze it. When you're recording, do you have to think about technique differently as to like when you're playing live? So, for example, not burying the beater on a slow song, whereas on a rock song you might you might bury the beater. Is that something you think about a bit more when you're recording?
Yes, it is. Yeah, definitely. I will almost kind of just feel it, and in order to feel it, you have to be used to either burying the beat or not burying the beat. But this is one of my main things that I try and get students to work on is bury, bury. If you're not learning to bury the beater is a great sound, and it's also easy because your leg can relax and leave the beater on the head. So it's a good thing. I say think of it like a boxing glove hitting a punch bag. It's a really satisfying thud. It sounds good. If you've got a resonant drum, you can't bury the beater. It won't let you do that. So we bury, we don't bury. And then also, if you're playing really quietly, if I'm burying, I'll play heel up and leave it like that. If I'm playing quietly or I'm playing a samba or some jazz, I'm playing heel down, I'm playing really, really quietly. So, yeah, those technical issues are important, and I definitely think about them, about how I'm going to approach. So that'll be more about the dynamic. If it's really quiet, I'll just go heel down. I might come off the drum. Or if I'm in the studio, I might take a little muffling out of the bass drum just to give the drum a little more note, a little more length. Sometimes I take all of the muffling out. That's a little too resonant for me, but there are drummers who don't muffle the bass drum at all and they get an amazing sound. It's just what you're used to. I think Keith Carlock doesn't muffle or hardly muffle. Simon Phillips, very little muffling, and they get incredible sounds. So it's just a different approach. But all of those things are important about how you're hitting the drums, how you're approaching the bass drum, your actual volume. Your actual volume's important. Whether you're playing, basically don't overdo it. If there's a set of mics involved, we'll never overdo it really. But if there's a set of mics involved, don't overdo it. Let the mics do the work, and you just stay in the comfort zone. That's a good thing to know. So techniques woven in and out of what I'm doing. I'm not by any means obsessed by it, but you use technique to get it's a means to an end.
Have you ever had anything go wrong on stage that you've had to recover from quite quickly?
Loads, millions of things, tons of stuff. Down to for something that happens only a few times in a lifetime, me going through a bass drum head. Don't ask me what will have caused it for that moment to have done it, but I've had a bass drum head go once on a Waterboys show. It's got to be changed. You can't go on. There's no way around that. Nobody minds. It's just what it is. We're doing a live show. If something goes wrong, share it with the audience and have a laugh and enjoy it and go, hey, just going to change the bass drum head. You'll just have to bear with us. And if you're working with someone who knows how to deal with that, my boss, Mike Scott, he's a fantastic artist and he can do a little tune on his own. And, I'm like, if he knows I can't play for a few minutes, it's fine. The secret is keep a spare one. Another time I had a bass drum head go on a jazz gig. I was actually playing with Wynton Marsalis. And my bass drum head went. Oh, it wasn't good. But it was just before the break and we were going to play after the break, so it didn't really matter. But, it's not the sort of thing you want to happen when the chips are down and you want to sound your best. Drums, cymbals falling over, falling off the stand, drums coming off the rostrum, turning up at a session without a snare drum stand. That's a tricky one to get around. Forgetting my cymbals, forgetting my bass drum pedal, the works. I've had it all. The wrong music, the wrong click track, people playing the wrong arrangement, the lot. Really. Kind of embrace mistakes. There's so many happen. You're kind of mortified. Dropping sticks, all the time. Playing the wrong tune. All that.
Yeah. Or starting the song live and you're like, 1, 2, I don't know how this starts.
Oh yeah, well that's just standard. Yeah, I've done that. I've definitely did a recording. I remember doing a recording once with a great friend of mine, Colin Towns, a fantastic musician, composer, arranger who arranges primarily for big band and jazz group now. And we were doing a big band recording with him. And I remember him counting it in the studio in Germany with the NDR big band. And I had no idea what I was going to play. And he just counted 4 in and I just hit something. And then took it from there. It's a really great concept. You know, it's a good thing to do not to work stuff out sometimes. Why not? You know, we're not paramedics. We're not saving lives. We're just playing the drums. And sometimes if it all goes wrong, why not? It's good. Have a laugh.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting you should mention that because in this house, in my household, you've got a drummer, obviously, and my wife is a paramedic. So there you go.
That is amazing. Well, I tell you, I can't. I know everyone's going on about the NHS at the moment. The thing about me is, I always go on about the NHS and always have done. And I think paramedics, medics, nurses, and everyone who works in that sector are heroes. And if anyone, you will know this, but if anyone has had the in their lives has interfaced with those people and they've seen whether they're saving your life or not, and in many cases they are saving lives all day long, it comes to realize, and it goes very close into your heart, how important they are, which is, I've been saying it for years, we're not saving people's lives, but your wife is saving people's lives, and so what she does really does matter, and it is a matter of life and death. But a lot of people, coming back to the music, um, people say, "Oh, how do I deal with nerves and all the rest of it?" I say, "Well, you know, if you're in the comfort zone and you're used to you know what you're doing, then you don't need to worry too much about it. At the end of the day, nothing's really going to happen. If you make mistakes, and we all do, nothing's going to happen. If you actually, as a drummer on a gig, don't turn up to that gig, just don't turn up. What's going to happen? Nothing. It doesn't really matter. They're going to get round it. I don't know, someone else will do it or whatever. I don't know. I mean, if the M1's blocked and you're driving up north, or, you know, the M20 down to Maidstone's blocked, you've got a gig and you don't show up. What's going to happen? Nothing. And if you remember that, it's good. So yeah, so it's a good time to give a shout out to all of our health workers. But I'm jumping on no bandwagon. If anyone has already seen my previous social media feeds, I'm very socially hooked up, and I hope that cold heart of our current Prime Minister has been maybe permeated for him to realise that you know, we need the NHS, and we're not all wealthy like he is, so we cannot have access to amazing world class health treatment. So yeah, I do think about that almost on a daily basis, Tom.
Mm. Oh, well, it's nice, and you should just mention a paramedic. There we go. That's why I thought I
Oh
should.
yeah.
You know, I mean,
Oh yeah, I love them. Tell your wife from me, thanks, but it's not just now, it's always. And let's hope that that dumbass government actually see fit, and they'll only do this through public pressure. Let's hope public pressure will put everyone, or put them on the back foot, and then it will force them to treat NHS workers with the pay grade primarily and the respect that they deserve. Forget rounds of applause. We know that. I mean, I round of applause them every time. But they need the money. As I always say, it's not the principle, Tom. It's the money. So fingers crossed on that.
exactly. Well, she's London Ambulance, and you know, they were struggling. They were struggling anyway. So bring this
Oh
along.
yeah.
Like, yeah.
I think there are good things to come for everyone involved in the NHS, because public pressure is going to be so big, and that's only a positive. So yeah, it's great. You know, if everyone realises that, because without your health, you're nothing, and you may well be dead as well. So if that can't be appreciated by a government, people appreciate it. The thing is, people vote in governments who don't appreciate it. So that's all I'll say. I think you get the drift.
Let's not get started, otherwise you'll get me talking about injecting domestos and stuff. You know.
Well, I wouldn't mind if Boris wants to trial it, you know, or Donald for that matter. Yeah. Anyway, good stuff. It's great. We'll pass my very best wishes on to your wife.
That's very kind of you. Thank you. Right. So back to drums.
Yeah.
Or not actually back to drums, as this question is. So remember, you can swerve any of these questions if you don't want to answer them.
Of course.
What are your hobbies away from drumming?
Oh, nice question.
It's weird, isn't it?
Good question.
Is drums
Yeah, I have been asked it before. It's a tricky one.
is drums kind of are our hobby as well as our job, I think, often. So
They are. They are. Music is all consuming. So it is a living and it is a hobby. We're really lucky. We live the dream. We do what we want to do. It's not all fun. It's not all easy, as we know. But it is still a hobby to me. I love it and I'm very involved in it. If I take myself really away from drumming and music, I'm pretty happy little camper in out and about in the world. I love it when I'm away and I'm just walking around cities. I love travel. It's fortunate I do that because when I'm touring, I get to see some places, and I greatly appreciate that. I really love going to other countries and seeing other people experiencing how things are around the world, and I'm lucky enough to have done that, which is fantastic. Um, I do. I love when I get the chance. I love to do a little bit of skiing, just larking around on the mountains. It's a beautiful thing to do. I'm lucky to enough to be spending a bit of time down here in southwest France, and we've got the mountains very nearby. So if I can get down there and do a bit, I do that, and I adore doing that. It's great fun. Similarly, when I get the chance to do, I love larking around in the sea. So I have messed around with a lot. I love snorkeling and done a fair bit of scuba diving, which I really enjoy too. It's a rather involved and slightly expensive pursuit, but it's fantastic fun to do. Really enjoy that. And then just looking after my garden is a beautiful thing. Mainly cutting the grass at the moment down here. There's been rain and sun, and here we've got a vegetable garden. We love planting stuff and just just normal simple things in life. Particularly during this lockdown, we've been eating. Don't really eat out down here. We've been eating fantastic food that mainly my wife cooks beautifully well, but just those joys of life, the simple things, having a bit more time and going for walks. Those are great things for me. I don't have to jump out of a plane with a parachute to get excited. You know, like today, it's a beautiful day, and if I get out in the sunshine, it's like, whoa, it's good. It's lovely.
and I think sometimes it's nice to have that break from drums as well, isn't it? Just when drums are your life, it's nice to kind of just have a few hours outside or whatever where you're not thinking about drums.
It really is. It's nice to get away from it, just so you can get a few things in perspective. Yeah, it's important, and we've got to immerse ourselves. But I think our music, our drumming, is an extension of what we're like as people, and so you've got to feed the soul. You've got to rest. You've got to be happy in your skin, and all of those things. Many of those things won't involve playing the drums. They'll involve day-to-day life. And if you are good with yourself, you can be more confident and a better musician. It's a big thing. I always try with students to try and get, like, oh, stop. I'm always saying to them, stop worrying about, it has to be right, or should my hand be like this or that. Just relax and enjoy yourself. It's more important in a way.
I think people get too hung up on technique and things like that sometimes. So yeah, definitely. You talked about food a minute ago. So my next curveball question for you. We've had some really interesting answers on this one. Are you ready for this? Drum roll, please. So, what's your favourite biscuit?
Oh, God. Well, yeah, I'm not really allowed biscuits these days because they're, I'm just trying to keep a girth control, keep my waistline in check, and try and reduce my sugar intake. But probably when I have eaten standard biscuits, I would probably say a chocolate hobnob is hard to beat.
Yes, that is the
But
drummer's.
is that drummer's choice?
That's definitely. I need to make a graph after I've done all of these interviews. That's
I
number
think
one.
you should.
Yeah, that's number one.
Yeah, but having said that, my yeah, like down here, my wife and my son have made some really great. We try and get a lot of sugar-free alternatives, and making stuff with um, monk fruit, which is like or xylitol or maple syrup. You can make some really nice biscuits, actually, homemade bickies.
Yeah, yeah, something homemade.
Worth a go. Yeah, we've had some beauties, really nice. Dip them in chocolate. Oh,
Are you a dunker? Um, or is it?
massive. Yeah, everything goes in the coffee.
Okay. I mean, it's dunking in coffee, is it?
Oh yeah, tea. Yeah, it was tea as well. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, love to dunk. Yeah, it's a big French thing. Yeah, so I'm used to it anyway. But in France, yeah, they dunk. Yeah, they have croissants in there. Anything.
Excellent.
Rabbit.
Okay, so my last serious question, going back to well, that was serious. I want to know what your favorite biscuit is.
No, this is great. This is dead serious. Food. Serious.
If you could give one bit of advice to up and coming drummers, no matter whether they're starting out or, a bit further down the line, if you could give them one bit of advice, what would that advice be?
Oh, probably enjoy yourself playing music. Follow your heart. Stay inspired. Uh, try and try and practice and improve, because if you do that, then you're going to be a better musician, and the more you put in, the more you take out. But if that comes from relaxation and enjoyment, it feels really natural. Don't force practice, but try and get it so that when you're practicing, you're improving. And then even if you're not practicing, like a lot of the time I'm not practicing when I'm on tour, I can't practice, and when I'm at home I've got other things to do. I often don't practice or can't practice, but I'm thinking about improving, thinking about how I can muffle my drums, thinking about lots of different things. So that would be my those would be my little set of handy hints. Is that helpful?
So, Ralph, thank you so much for spending your time with us here at DrumWise today. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. All the best and stay safe out there.
Tom, an absolute pleasure. Thank you for inviting me on to DrumWise. Very best of luck with your school. Very best of luck with your playing. And it's great to come on and talk about stuff and spread the word. Really appreciate it. If anyone wants to find me, I'm on all usual social media channels. By all means, get in touch.